Make sure that stays on. Is it on now? All right, cool.
So we're doing an in-class review?
Yes. And what always happens is when we do an in-class review, how many people do you think actually come to class? Well, usually about 60 to 70%. And who do you think's not here? The people that are struggling. So I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about that. But if you're struggling, you should, everyone should come to the review. Be really helpful. Because really, I think, 12, 13, 14, 5, is that 4 chapters? I think 4 chapters was enough for that test. Especially because it's got 12 and 15 on it, which are kind of hard. Yeah, and there's 2 days. Well, there's more stuff if it's divided in half. So I decided I didn't like chapter 16, so we'll just be doing this exam, and then we'll do chapter 17, and then we'll have the final, basically. Because 17 is like your senses, which is kind of cool. Sight, hearing, all that stuff. All right, so we need to finish chapter 15, part 1 then. Oh, and I need to give. Where'd she go? That's part 1. So I believe what we had left to talk about was the receptors and everything. Part 1.
Well, part 2 is behind it. Okay. So it's not confusing. Because the second one, yeah, but there's still.
All right, so. All right, so we were on neurotransmitters. First of all, what is a neurotransmitter? What does that word mean? Anybody know? You're getting closer. It's not quite a neuron that transmits, but it's definitely neurons are involved in some kind of transmission. Do it. It's a chemical. I don't know if we'd call it an enzyme. It is a chemical message. Acetylcholine is one of them. What do you think where is the message going from? Where is it going to? What? So it's going from one neuron to another? No, not quite. So it's going from one neuron to another. That's a neurotransmitter. So you remember we did those chemical synapses? Where it was like the signal got to the end of a neuron and then it sent something out to activate the next neuron? That's a neurotransmitter. So it's a molecule released by one neuron to activate another neuron. So probably pretty important for you to know that if we're going to have a whole discussion about neurotransmitters. If you don't know what they are, it might be a little confusing. So thinking back to the whole sympathetic nervous system, which neuron do you think releases the neurotransmitter, the preganglionic or the postganglionic? It's the pre, and then who receives it? The post, right? So whenever we're looking at that diagram, you kind of think whenever that solid line met the dotted line, that's the synapse, and that's where that neurotransmitter was moving. All those connections, that's what those connections mean. All right. And part of what was on your study guide for part 2 is those 2 words. So cholinergic neurons secrete acetylcholine. And so we've got, who's shaking back there? All right, so we've got types of neurons, the neurotransmitter they send out, and then the receptor on the next neuron that binds to it. So cholinergic. And then there's 2 different receptors that bind to it. There's nicotinic. Yeah. So this is, the pre-neuron. This would be like the post neuron. Or as you'll see in a little bit, it could be receptors in the tissue too. And we'll add to that table in a little bit as well. So the second type of neuron is the adrenergic neuron. See if I can spell this. And it secretes norepinephrine as a neurotransmitter. Is that spelled right? And the receptor for that is the adrenergic receptors. All right. So in the sympathetic nervous system, this is just kind of zooming into one kind of set of a pre and a post in the target tissues. So up on top, this is how most of those signals are sent to most tissues. So you've got preganglionic, and it sends out acetylcholine. That's its neurotransmitter. So what kind of neuron is it? It sends out acetylcholine. It's the cholinergic. That's this first one. And then the postganglionic neuron right there, is that its dendrite or its axon terminal that I'm pointing at? It's the dendrite. So those dendrites have nicotinic receptors on them, right? Because nicotinic receptors bind to acetylcholine. So then that activates this neuron, signal travels down, and then the postganglionic neuron sends out norepinephrine. So what kind of neuron is it? I know that word is so adrenergic. It sends out norepinephrine, and then the tissues have the adrenergic receptors. So basically, if you've still got your diagram, all those tissues over here, they have adrenergic receptors. Everything except the skin, basically, has that adrenergic receptor over there. So that's most of it. The neurons that go to your sweat glands, for whatever reason, they're slightly different. The first step is the same. So preganglionic secretes acetylcholine, binds to nicotinic receptor, all the same. But the postganglionic neuron secretes acetylcholine, and the sweat glands have a muscarinic receptor. So it's kind of a difference there. Right. Does anyone need one? Yes. Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the picture, yeah.
You said most, right? You said most of these are hydrogen.
Right. Only difference is really the sweat glands. Yeah. We're going to use this for other stuff today, too. And we're on the blue side. So hopefully Pedro's got his picture from number 1 that y'all could look at. You could show him. All right. So you're going to add in the neurotransmitters, basically, to your picture from number 1 that you drew last time, like right on the front there. And I'll put this slide up because this will help. That slide might help you too, if you're stuck. Cool. So you'll be back on like the front side. Like you're adding stuff to your picture.
Oh, now we're adding more to it?
Oh yeah, it's not crazy enough yet. Starts in the spinal cord.
Right, but if it goes, so this will be a colon, and this will be that. From the
Right.
spinal cord, releases to the colon.
And then what kind of receptors there? So you're adding the,
I mean,
yeah,
nic-
nicotinic. It's like, it's related to nicotine receptors.
so-
But you don't have receptors on them, so you can just add a little receptor to it. So we're looking for neurotransmitters and receptors.
Well, I know that, but this is that, right?
Yeah, like zoomed into just one connection.
I don't want to forget that.
Right.
This is one. And then we're supposed to add,
The picture that y'all drew in the front, because you did it at home, right? Or did you just,
well, I did a picture. And this is all I did.
right,
That was all I did.
okay.
I don't know how far you guys have gone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we got through 5.
So add a property neurotransmitter receptor to that.
And if you get stuck up there, will help. So it's telling you what the receptors and neurotransmitters are.
Right here,
So what would we have to add to it? The
Neurotransmitters and receptors.
thingies here?
Yeah, put a little triangle and label it or something. Because right now, see how you just have that like empty gap there between them? Obviously, something has to travel.
Okay, so then that's where I put the receptors.
So is the receptor on the axon terminal or the dendrite? Okay, so you add a little receptor in there.
So
And then you have a neurotransmitter going between there, right?
dendrite would be
The nicotinic? Mm-hmm. So you could like label that triangle as the nicotinic receptor.
Would we just
Yep.
draw the little circles right here and right here?
It'd actually be right here, right there.
So
in the middle.
Yeah, because it goes.
Because they had that
Uh-huh.
one here.
so like this.
Yeah, so that'd be your neurotransmitter, and then there needs to be a receptor on the dendrite for it.
Oh wait, right here.
It's the middle. This part right?
The dendrites, right?
Oh, the dendrites are this one.
Yeah. So there's these little dots leave those terminals, and then they go over to the dendrite and bind something. Just draw a little something to catch those little circles.
From over here.
It could be there, sure. Anywhere on the dendrite would be fine. So any of those little things sticking out could bind to it. Like that one, that one, that one. So it's something on the surface that catches the signal, which is the little circles.
Is that right?
ACH. Do you have a receptor for the ACH?
Is it the knife goes in it?
Yeah,
So is that,
it's on the dendrite.
so it's right here? Because that's the dendrite. No.
No, it's
So
this
one's
one.
the
Yeah,
dendrite. So it's on this one?
right. Because the neurotransmitter comes from the pre, like it's released from there, and then it's going to go over there and bind to the dendrite. So you could just draw a little shape or something. Doesn't really matter what it is.
So right here, there's another whatever it is, right?
You're getting it. The neurotransmitters and the receptors.
Right here? What do you mean by neurotransmitters?
Let's see, they're like those things, little dots. They're the molecule that goes, because you see how there's kind of like a gap between here and here?
So there's molecules.
There's something that goes between them. So it leaves these little ends here, the terminals, and they float over there and bind a receptor. Right?
So these are the neurotransmitters.
Yeah, that's why I was having a hard time looking at it. Mhm.
So do I have everything then? The pre-dendrionic one.
Acetylcholine, nicotinic, booze.
Acetylcholine's in the middle of those.
Do you have the epinephrine in that picture somewhere?
Epinephrine would
Or norepinephrine, the NE? It's the one right before the muscle. Or I guess wherever it's going before the effector. So like you see where you said there was an adrenergic receptor? That's going to receive the neurotransmitter. So there's like a gap there. So just like you've got there. So if you just write NE there, and then a receptor on the muscle, you'd have it. So those little dots are epinephrine.
So are there neurotransmitters down here too?
Yep. And they're the NE, the norepinephrine. Because the second neuron's adrenergic.
So these are different because it went through the axon?
They're different because it's a different type of neuron. Because the pre make ACH.
Okay, that's what that is?
Yeah, you should label that ACH. So it's acetylcholine. So did y'all get the ones at the end too?
She did.
Does that heart have a receptor on it?
Should I draw those little things?
Yeah, something catching it.
So it'd be the sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you get them?
This is with a little Y.
Cool. So you just need some labels on there then.
Oh, the N.
You know, like what those dots are and what the receptors are. So like what kind of receptor, you know. So that would be an adrenergic receptor at the bottom here.
ACH?
Adrenergic.
Oh.
The ACH is actually the one, the transmitter up there.
Even 6, maybe 7.
All right. Getting caught up?
Yeah.
It's good you have a good drawer at your table. Because you know one of the reasons I do this is I can't draw. So if I tried to draw that, it would be a mess. Oh, the bottom
Oh
one?
no, never mind. You just have to put some on on the end, right?
Yeah.
The same
Like
as
that?
these blue ones, as the ACH.
No, so just like, I think she's got it. Except it's an adrenergic receptor.
So it's not an ACH.
For a heart.
Oh, it's not ACH either.
What is it?
It's norepinephrine. So it's like that set on the bottom on the table. It's an adrenergic neuron, makes norepinephrine, and then the heart has the adrenergic receptor. What you got? Most parts right, and then all we need is a label for those two, which is the thing on the top, basically. So norepinephrine, adrenergic receptors, and you have it. All right, so let me go over a few things that I saw y'all were doing out there. What do you think's different about the different neurotransmitters? Do they have the same shape? They don't. So let's say this one's a triangle, and this one's a square. Do you think the receptors have the same shape then? Like the nicotinic versus adrenergic? No. What do you think their shape is? Not quite. I don't know if I'd say it's a triangle. What does this transmitter do to that receptor? It fits it, right? So if this is the transmitter, then the receptor would have to be something that holds it, right? So that'd be the receptor. Right, I'll put like a line. So this is the neurotransmitter, that's the receptor. Whereas this receptor, what kind of shape do you think it has? Something that fits around the square, right? So. This one. So that's how the neuron's able to kind of communicate to each other. And if you're, see if everybody's writing down stuff, make sure you write somewhere on the, this is for the sympathetic nervous system. Because when we do parasympathetic, it's going to be somewhat different. So this is sympathetic, all this stuff. And I would point out, because I noticed a lot of people were missing like receptors at the end. In order for any cells to respond to these neurotransmitters, they have to have the receptor for it. So like the heart would have this receptor to respond to that neurotransmitter. What does the heart do when it's stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system? The heart. Right. Like when norepinephrine comes over here and binds to the heart. So it increases the heart rate. So when this little molecule hits the heart cells, it tells them to beat faster. Right. That's part of the fight or flight response. So just trying to get, a combination of the tiny molecular level and sort of the whole body level. That's kind of how they're connected. All right. Questions on the study guide for part 2 before we take our quiz then? Yes.
Just about this.
Uh-huh.
Can we just let you know that?
Sure. And actually, someone's doing theirs today. Sure. Let's take our quiz first, and we'll do a couple extra credits. But Alma really wants to go first, she told me. She didn't really say that. Yeah. Yeah, so the coronary arteries are going to constrict when they're activated by the parasympathetic nervous system.
On the last one, I was thinking that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I was just being confused with exactly more.
Did anyone come up with some? Sleeping and relaxing or two? Do you have any others?
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah.
The way it's just
Yeah, the wording could be different. I just don't know how to fix it exactly. Situations, maybe? Would that make more sense?
I don't know, because, the other one was fight or flight.
Well, for the other ones, I was thinking more like being chased by a tiger or being startled and scared for sympathetic.
Yeah.
So if you can think of how to word that grammatically that means that, let me know. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so the coronary arteries constrict, and the pancreas makes insulin and more digestive juices. Yeah, so the liver is going to store glucose, like take it out of the blood and store it. Because we call this one like the rest and digest division. So it's kind of digest your food, don't use any extra energy that you don't need to, kind of save up for the next time something's trying to eat you. You never know, you'll need this for zombie times. You'll need that, these systems. Maybe that's what we'll do on the last day, is just watch Walking Dead, and we'll decide who's having which nervous system being activated at which times. Pretty good. All right, anything else? We're good? I could find it in this huge pile of a room. It would help if I knew where your quiz was. Hold on. Maybe it's my office, or maybe it's not here at all. Oh, good. Fear not. Yeah. I bet they have an extra in the middle here. Yeah. All right. All right, pass those on up if you're done.
You left them blank.
All right. All right. Yeah. All right, so our questions. Which does the parasympathetic nervous system tell the pancreas to do? Was it constrict sphincters, release insulin, or release glucagon? It is insulin, which is going to tell the body, take glucose out, store it as fat, glycogen, just store it for later. What about telling the coronary arteries to do? Constrict. And y'all asked me twice about that. So hopefully everybody got that one. What about telling the heart? Increase heart rate or decrease? Decrease. And an agonist, a molecule that activates a receptor, blocks a receptor, causes mutations, or blocks ion channels. Activates a receptor. And a cholinergic neuron. It's on the board. Be acetylcholine there, or ACH. That was B on that one. All right. Who wants to go first for extra credit? All right, cool.
So I get my extra credit on Botox as a neurological, especially for migraine. So Botox is produced by a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum. As you know, Botox is known for cosmetic treatment, but it's also known to treat chronic medical problems like migraine, spasms, involuntary sexual or neck movement. It works by blocking the nerve endings from releasing a substance that triggers the muscle movement and signaling. Botox usually lasts 4 to 6 weeks, and patients need to follow up for treatment. Too much Botox in rare circumstances can lead to death.
Can you talk to our
And what question did you have that you answered? Yeah, tell us everything. Why not?
I didn't understand what Clostridium, what the bacteria was, and it's just neurotoxins prevent neurotransmitters from functioning properly. They inhibit motor control and experience paralysis. They appear 12 to 72 hours after injecting or eating this bacteria. This bacteria grows on food. Some people don't recover and help others too with medical products. The second question was Borosavum. I don't know what that was either. I looked it up, and it's a pigment order that causes eyes to close, open and close uncontrollably.
Oh, weird.
So you take that on your desk?
Sure, yeah, it's great. And just so you know, that was questions that Alma came up with while she was reading it. So like that was the, on B on there, it says come up with some questions you had and then answer them. Just did a little bit. Sure? Yes, get it.
So I found an article on lifescience.com. It was about spinal cord injuries and how they're able to fix them now. Most spinal cord injuries are caused by damage to the axons. The axons in the peripheral nervous system can make an effort to regrow, while ones in the central nervous system don't understand effort that they're trying to grow back. The researchers' ultimate goal was to develop a way to trigger the nerves to grow and repair, leading to some recovery in patients, and this was going to be done through gene therapy. Some questions I had while reading the article were what enzymes they use to fix the spinal cord, how has this discovery changed gene therapy, or has it been tested on any animals, how many axons go back and could too many go back. One of the questions that I chose to look more into was about which enzyme was used. They found an enzyme known as chondroitinase ABC, or CHABC, which digests scan-forming proteins. This would be needed to administer, or it'd be needed to be re-administered repeatedly during the work correctly because they die really quick. So, and they break down really quick. So, it's possible to help someone with this through gene therapy, but they have to be injected like all the time with this enzyme to keep their abilities good.
And like constantly, like multiple times a day or something. Yeah, cool.
That'll work for 1 point.
So 1 percentage point. 1 percentage point. Cool. Well, thanks. Nice work. We've got plenty of other people that could do it. That's the same as getting 10 more points on a test.
It really took me like 10 minutes. I just Googled cool new things about anatomy.
But it says, it gives you references of where to look.
So that, yeah, so probably the easiest thing is just to go to Google News, and that's probably what you're saying. Yeah, you can look for sections like health or science, and just scan through and say, oh, that looks interesting. Yeah. All right, add this. All righty. You ready to get started then? Finish up part 2. Everybody's excited to go do their extra credit research. And it takes less time than you think. It's just they sounded so, smart and like they know everything. Doesn't take that long. Because, I've never heard of either of those things. Well, I heard about the Botox, but I hadn't heard about that before. So it's interesting you did Botox, because look what it did. It blocked these neurotransmitters from being released. We were just talking about. Actually, wouldn't be, it'd be like from the postganglionic neurons, wasn't it? You said it was at the tissues itself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so matches exactly what we're learning about. All right. So parasympathetic, basically talked about all these before, but it's the system for not fight or flight, so rest and digest is what they call it. And so it's all these responses to conserve energy and store energy. So you don't need your heart to beat so fast or so hard because you don't need so much oxygen going everywhere because you're not running or in a stressful situation. And actually, so what we're going to do, I think, in lab next week is test to see if we can activate one of these systems and change your heart rate. So that'll be an experiment that you'll decide. And we'll also be measuring how relaxed your sphincters are in your intestines. You do have sphincters all over your GI tract. It's not just the ones you think about. There's one between the stomach and the small intestine. There's one between the small intestine and the large. Lots of sphincters around. Why do you think you would relax those sphincters? You can't even, are you going to laugh over there? Oh, I thought you were getting ready to start laughing because I kind of laugh when I say sphincter. So, why would you want to relax your sphincters? That would be a good guess, but not quite. To what? Yeah, so do you think your digestion is going to happen faster or slower if you relax all these sphincters? Faster, right? And then more motility, so all the intestines are going to squeeze harder, make more stomach pH, or make more stomach acid, lower the pH.
So what's like the time frame of like being in a fight or flight? Like that's where like it gets unhealthy to be in it that long.
So I don't know if there's it kind of depends on the person and also like how activated it is. But what you're actually talking about is what we'd call like chronic stress. So
I'm saying like you're getting chased by a bear, but it's like 10 miles. You're like
yeah, so you eventually get to what's called the exhaustion phase, and you've used up all your stored glucose. Like your heart is used, like it just can't keep pumping harder and harder. It's just kind of stopped, like not stops, but goes back to normal. But yeah, I think it would just more depend on the person in terms of like how long that would last. And it's not really like a sudden, just all of a sudden. Yeah, it's not like that. It's more like, well, we've got our heart rate up to 150. We've been running, and now it's down to 130. And it can't stay at 150. And now it's down to 100. It's be kind of like a gradual. Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. All right, so what actually activates it? Basically anything relaxing, especially sleeping. You can do some yoga stuff too, or meditate. That all activates parasympathetic. And so, yeah, definitely. And also it's not just digesting it, but then it's after it's in the blood, it's going to be storing it and everything. So that's probably one of the reasons they tell people it's probably not good to eat right before you go to bed, because then what happens to all that stuff you ate? Probably going to get stored as fat because you're not doing anything. You just got all this food pouring into your blood. Your body's like, what should I do with it? Let's just store it for later. So that's the function, basically. And we may as well compare its structure to the sympathetic. So first off, how many people need another copy of those pictures? Oh, here's the one. So make sure you're looking at the red side now. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. I give you all one. All right, so looking at this red one here, one of the first things you notice, is there any trunk next to the spinal cord like in sympathetic? So, and then also, do you feel like it's more full or less full of neurons and stuff? It's less full. And also, where do they start? So they're going to start in the brainstem, like the medulla, and then the very, very bottom of the spinal cord. Whereas in our sympathetic, it was all up and down the spinal cord, where the preganglionic neurons were. Not quite. So the sympathetic technically starts at the spinal cord. Both of these systems are under the control of the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus sends signals to the brainstem or the bottom of the spinal cord to activate all those neurons that are on here. And then the preganglionic neurons. Where's that picture? All right, so the preganglionic neurons, the ones from the brainstem, some of them go to ganglions, just like the sympathetic did. Draw those blue circles. And then a lot of them, the preganglionic neuron, how far does it look like it goes? Like to the lungs, for example. Basically all the way, right? So you've got this dark red, it goes all the way. And then once it's at the lungs, that's where it meets the short, tiny little postganglionic neurons that go maybe slightly deeper into the tissue or something. Same thing, with the liver, stomach, intestines. All those preganglionic neurons are going nearly all the way to it. That's just how it's designed by evolution, I guess. I don't have a great answer for why. I could tell you why there's a second neuron, and that's mostly so this first one can come in, and then it can activate like 10 neurons here that go to different places of the organ. So maybe that's more efficient that way. And then the same thing with the ones that come out down at the bottom of the spinal cord out to these different tissues. Of course, the ones up top by the head, they do go to the ganglion first before they go all over to the eyes and everything else. All right. And just as a reminder, the key is the same as on the front side. So thick lines are pre. Maybe we'll put this up here too. What were the circles? Are they axon terminals or dendrites? It's okay, I had to look at the picture too because I couldn't remember which way they did them. And then the little, whatever that thing is, it's the axon terminals. So whenever they meet, that's a synapse. All right. So it shouldn't say 4, that should say 1. Some of those. There's a pile. There you go. So just like you did on the sympathetic, it's asking you how the signals are traveling. So you should say the preganglionic neuron goes from here to here. And then it activates the postganglionic neuron, which goes from here to here.
the biggest smell to the
Which one are we at? It's extra.
yeah.
Do it. Mm-hmm. It's one of them. It's like a salivary gland. It does go through there. Those are the glands that make your saliva. Speaking or something. I guess. And then lacrimal gland makes your tears. This is funny. Somebody from my last class, I just drew a heart on there. Well, they answered the rest of it. Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Like when you say it comes from the spinal cord to the genre to this,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know, like, you would label that as a spinal cord.
It's technically like the brain stem. All right, so maybe check in with your group there as you're working on it. See if you got the same stuff.
Which one are you doing for the liver? No, you gotta do the pre.
Yeah, we want to know where the pre and the post. Right, so the pre goes from the brainstem, right?
Okay, yeah, from.
Yeah. That's what you mean. I know that's what you mean. Look what you're doing in here. I know it's the kids' size table that. Do you want some Play-Doh too? Yeah.
Bring the 5 cleaners and the scissors and the glue.
Yep.
I'll make you something.
Maybe a turkey.
Maybe a heart.
We'll make this right.
Make you a heart.
Okay. It's good. I need something to give my wife for Mother's Day. So.
You can give him that.
Yeah.
Right?
Which one?
So it goes preganglion from brainstem to the vagus nerve,
Yeah. Yeah.
the nerve, to the liver, and then moves to post, correct?
And then the post just goes like deeper into the liver, basically. Because you can see how tiny short it is, right?
Yeah.
The post, it's just that little tiny.
You have to indicate which one it's asking for.
Oh, like which one's which?
Yeah, well, we know that, but we couldn't find it.
Oh, some of it's because the post is so tiny.
So would the post be, like for the liver, would it just be right here?
Yeah, it's that tiny little short thing.
How would we put that though?
Just like from the outside of the liver, maybe deeper into it or something.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Gotta? So, it looks like only on some of those do you talk about the pre and the post.
So on this one,
So, like for the liver one,
doesn't it go like
so everything that you have written,
right to the left,
right? But then you see how there is another neuron after that?
right here? So what will we put there now?
So maybe that the pre goes really close to the liver, and then the post goes into the liver.
So the pre movement to liver and
That's the pre, and then the post goes from there deeper into the liver.
so do the same to the heart one?
Yeah, it's to be the same for the heart one. Right, because you're right, it does go to the heart, and then the next neuron just takes it the last little bit of the way. All right. Sure, I got him. Except we want to hear about which one's pre and which one's post.
I figured that out.
Yeah. That's right. You weren't here for the first try at this.
Broadway. That's the only one I know is on Broadway.
All right. Fun. All right, so let's make sure everybody's got those. So let's see. So the liver would have started in the brainstem. That's the preganglionic neuron, and it goes all the way from the brainstem to the edge of the liver, basically. And then the postganglionic neuron takes it deeper into the liver. That's what I would say. And as I saw walking around, if you don't write the words pre or post, you're not going to get all your points. Because if you just tell me, well, it goes from brainstem to the liver, well, yeah, but I did give you the diagram to look at, so hopefully you could take it a little farther than that. Yeah, you will have this for your test. This is the exact one. In color. Otherwise, it's hard to see. Then the next one, parasympathetic to the bladder, comes from, it's hard to tell, maybe S3 through, that's the preneuron. Preneuron goes to the urinary bladder, and just like with the liver, the post neuron just goes deeper into the bladder, spreads the signal around something. Right. Sublingual gland. I'd say there's two different answers you could have had for that. So the preganglionic neuron either goes from the brainstem to the submandibular ganglion, or the pterygopalatine ganglion. Either one of those would have been correct. And then the post goes from that ganglion to the submandibular gland, or sublingual gland. Sublingual gland makes saliva, by the way. And for the heart, went from the preganglionic neuron, went from the brainstem, part of the vagus nerve, to the heart, and then the post took it deeper into the heart. Something like that. All right. I know you want to learn more about neurotransmitters. So here's our parasympathetic pre- and post-ganglionic neurons. The pre's over on the left. So what kind of neuron is that first one? Is it cholinergic or adrenergic? It's making ACH. So it's cholinergic, right? Because we know we see ACH here, cholinergic. And then the postganglionic neuron, what kind of neuron is it? Did y'all say same thing? Is that what I heard? That'd be like the same thing. So for sympathetic, parasympathetic, the first neuron is cholinergic, and then cholinergic. And then what kind of receptors at the end there? And the effector tissue. It's the muscarinic. So this is the pre-neuron. This is the post. And if we did our little sympathetic here. So if we went back to our sympathetic nervous system, I should bring that slide up real fast. Look at it. Where was it? And for now, since it's most of the tissues, we're just going to stick with the top one. So what's that first neuron type? Is it cholinergic or adrenergic? We got and then the second neuron type. It's either cholinergic or adrenergic. the second neuron. It's the adrenergic. And then what kind of receptor at the end? So it is adrenergic receptor, and for now, for this chapter, we won't worry about the sweat gland thing, because that's confusing. So what's interesting about these signals and these receptors is that those heart cells that you were looking at, they have an adrenergic receptor, and they also have the muscarinic receptor, like in the same cell. So whichever neurotransmitter comes to the heart, it tells it to either speed up if it's sympathetic, or if they get the muscarinic receptor activated, then the heart slows down. So those cells have both receptors. And so you've got both kinds of neurons coming in, but only one of them sending out a neurotransmitter. That's kind of how they know. All right, so based on that, I want to know a bunch of questions. We'll let you try it on your own for a little while. So it's all about receptors and neurotransmitters. Key thing you want to remember, if I ask you about what kind of neuron, it's either cholinergic or adrenergic. If it's asking about neurotransmitters, it's either acetylcholine or norepinephrine. And if it's asking about receptors, it's either nicotinic, muscarinic, or adrenergic. So make sure you read the question like twice to remind yourself. And basically with this information up here, you should probably be able to answer all of them, or at least come pretty close. Oh. Is that parasympathetic?
Yeah, parasympathetic. Nicotinic, right?
Not most of them.
You only gave us one.
For the para, right?
Yeah.
But sympathetic, the second neuron is adrenergic. For sympathetic. That's
You
that.
see what I'm saying? It's just like, which one? It doesn't say for the post. Do you mean post?
Target cells. Which means not neurons. Anyone else who's wondering where it says target cells, that means like the tissues, like the target tissues, not other neurons or something. You're close, but see how it says like what neurotransmitter? That means it has to be acetylcholine or norepinephrine. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Depending on what the question says.
They always put it up there,
Some of them ask for receptors, don't they?
so no, this is a first four.
Right, so the first four are either acetylcholine or norepinephrine. That's the only two neurotransmitters that are on there. Well, you're close, but two, it said which neurotransmitter? It said adrenergic. That's a type of neuron. So say you wrote acetylcholine and norepinephrine for the other ones.
Oh, okay.
Not quite. So 2 through 5 are neurotransmitters. So it's either acetylcholine or norepinephrine.
Oh, okay.
Which you basically, I mean, if you know what neuron type it is, you could probably figure it out. All right, so take a moment to compare in your group there, and we'll go over them. So you got the same stuff. Oh. I should have wrote up here.
I don't know if they're right.
So for 2 through 5 it needs to be, or 2 through 5 needs to be neurotransmitters. So it's either norepinephrine or acetylcholine.
Oh, you're asking which neurotransmitter?
Yes.
And I had to erase the two. No, I'm wrong on that one. So that would be the A acid.
Mhm.
Okay, I see what
Yeah.
you're asking now. That's what I
Well,
don't know. Once I see it, and then
yeah,
just need to read it. So then,
definitely. So what neurotransmitter is made by those kind of neurons? You tell us up there. Mm-hmm. It's ACH. Did you? And you erased it?
so which
I had the norepinephrine, but isn't it acetylcholine because it's still the cholinergic?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then for this one, for the president, but it was,
Oh, there's no such receptor as cholinergic.
then what are you wanting to be the receptors?
Well, there's these three: nicotinic, muscarinic, and adrenergic.
See, sympathetic.
All right, so let's make sure you got those, and then we'll send you on your way. So number 2 was ACH, or acetylcholine. 3 was NE, or norepinephrine. 4 was ACH, so acetylcholine. 5, ACH, acetylcholine. 6 is adrenergic, and 7 is muscarinic. And bring these next time because we'll do our big table of comparisons